So, case study today on the chart of Adolf Hitler. Why was the dasha of his exalted sun so terrible? He found himself in the moon dasha. How could that be? It all boils down to rulerships, yogas, and what makes karmas ripen. So check out this advanced case study. Hey, I'm going to be doing a case study here. This is actually this was initially going to be done for some of my advanced students in my certification courses because they were asking about how to make predictions, specific predictions based on the formula and the way that I've been reading charts for more than a decade using the chart of Adolf Hitler. And I'm going to be showing how to do that based on this simple formula. This formula is from my book, Chapter 14, Making Predictions Using Dashas and Transits. Now, I'm not going to be talking about the transits part, but I'm going to be talking about how to make predictions using dashas, and so you can know when karmas ripen, when karmas are produced. And again, this might seem like, well, every astrologer talks about this. Actually, no, they don't. If you listen to astrologers, so many times they pull, their methods of prediction are so random, like you don't know what is making the karmas ripen. And I think you might be so used to it, this way of working as being so dispersed and not formulaic, that you might not even really notice it. Well, yeah, okay, I was in Jupiter Dasha, that's why I had a child. Well, that might have a child, but God knows there are plenty of people who have children not in Jupiter Dasha, or something that seems to make no sense, like, Ketu in the 8th house. Why did I have children? And then the astrologer, oh, it's because of this, and it's something that really doesn't follow, okay? And if you followed that rule that they just stated, you'd never see it again, except, oh yeah, it's aspected by Jupiter, and then here it's that, and it's just this convoluted thing. So I have very simple framework, and the reason Hitler is brought out, and I actually use it as a case study quite a lot, because it doesn't really seem to make a lot of sense, especially because you look at exalted planets and whatnot, and all of these all these biases that we have that just don't work once you start doing astrology correctly and scientifically. So I'm just going to go over the simple formula, especially on how to use the dashas. So it says, when making predictions about events, the first things we need to look at is the dasha cycle. Planetary dashas determine which karmas will be ripening at which time based on very precise and specific rules. Karmas unfold at their given time. This is how the planets deliver their experiences to us from the subtle to the gross realms. When the planetary cycles run, events get produced based on a few specific rules. Karmas are produced based on the planet as a karaka, which is its indicator, house ruler, where the signs fall from the rising sign, ruler of a planet in its Rashi, so when it rules a planet in its Rashi, or rules a planet in its nakshatra. So there's no hierarchy in the above list. You need to look for a confluence of factors to see what the most prevalent issues will be. A few keys: as it relates to karmas, the planets deliver results based on what they are and what they rule. For example, and then I use a couple examples. So if we look at the karaka, for example, the sun is the spiritual force of power which we experience in the form of confidence, etc. That's the sun as a karaka. So the mahadasha of the sun is going to awaken the person's relationship with power, that spiritual force of power, vision, and whatnot, regardless of what it rules. That's the deeper lesson. But if the sun rules the second house, for example, for like a Cancer Lagna like Angelina Jolie, it's also the planet of wealth, values, and income. Earlier in the book, I went over Angelina Jolie's chart in a general sense. Now we're looking at the karmas. So for instance, if the sun rules the second house, then the sun dasha also activates her second house. Again, these things aren't separate. For a Cancer person, that spiritual force of power, vision, revolves around family, resources. This is why Cancer people put so much energy, attention, and power into second house things like values, family, speech, food, all of that stuff. This is why they're not separate. And then when we get into the planet in its Rashi, if there are planets in Leo, the sign the sun rules, it will also produce those planets, especially during the subdasha of that planet. So again, just like up here, see the ruler of a planet in its Rashi. See if there are planets in Leo, then they also get activated, especially during the subdasha of the planet. So for example, if someone has Mars in Leo, then Sun Mars will especially produce the result. You look for the situation where the Mahadasha planet rules the subdasha planet. I say that right here. And if there's a planet in Kritika Nakshatra, it will also get produced because the sun rules that nakshatra, right? So again, it's based on rulerships. First, the Karaka, then the house the planet rules, then planets in that house, in that sign, or in that nakshatra. And then it says, pay close attention when a Mahadasha planet rules the subdasha planet. For example, a Mercury-Jupiter cycle with Mercury and Jupiter sign or nakshatra will be very active for showing major changes relative to what is indicated. Because in this case, Mercury is ruling Jupiter. The Mahadasha planet is ruling the subdasha planet. Okay? So that's very simple rules, and they work, pretty much 95% of the time or something like that. Once in a while, you won't exactly see it. Once in a while, you'll see something very, tertiary, but powerful, like an aspect to the ruler or something, but it's usually the ruler. And I'll give this example of Hitler Rashi. Okay, so Hitler was born in 1898. So here we see the birth chart, birth time, April 20th, 1889 at 6:30. And it creates this chart. He started in Venus Dasha until around the end of 1907, which is when he went into Sun Dasha. So just to have that birth chart there first. So he was born in 1889, as it says. So in 1907, April 20th, 1889. So 1907, he would have been, at the end, he would have been 18 years old. And, this shows that this was a time of great transformation. His mother dies. He gets rejected by his art school. But up until that time, he had wanted to be an artist. He was quite successful at it, relatively speaking. He wound up being homeless in Vienna, I think it was, and barely getting by until the Moon Dasha in 1913, when he finds himself in the war. He was a decorated soldier. Then February 1920, he ascends to fame as a speaker and a leader after his famous 24 points speech when he was in Moon Mercury Dasha, Mercury subdasha. So let's look at why this happened this way and why there was such a big change from his Venus Dasha to his Sun Dasha. So based on those principles of rulership. So when we look at the Venus Dasha, of course Venus is his ruling planet. Venus also rules Purva Ashada. So that means that this Moon Jupiter Ketu in his third house of skills, intelligence, trying to figure things out, was active in that Venus Dasha, which also includes, the Moon is also the 10th house ruler. Jupiter is, again, a sense of, purpose. But Venus also rules Mars and Venus in his 7th house, because they're in Bharani Nakshatra. So Mars and Venus form a powerful Raja Yoga. Again, Venus rules, Venus is participating in the Raja Yoga, which I didn't mention that those are powerful structures. It's a trine lord with an angle, in an angle with an angle lord, Mars. So there was a lot of power, and it was getting activated. It was ruled by Venus. Again, rulerships. So again, it also rules the Raja Yogas. All of those structures of power are really what are focused on when you're looking to make predictions. And those things get ruled by the planets. So again, Venus is also the first house ruler, which is a Dharma house lord. It also rules the 8th house. So it's that kind of planet. So the sun dasha, again, why such a big change from the sun? The first thing people say, and again, I often use this as an example to sort of rid people of this expectation that, well, how could that have happened? This exalted sun, this should be a good dasha for him. How come when he went in his sun dasha, mother dies, he's an art school reject, and he's basically homeless and just getting by and very much lost in his sun dasha. Hitler lost in the sun dasha? Why? Well, let's take a look. We have this, first of all, what does the sun rule? Well, nothing in Leo, nothing in the sun's nakshatras either. So the sun doesn't rule anything. Again, when this happens, then you have to look at what's affecting the sun. And again, first thing people say, it's exalted. Good. Should be good. Well, the sun, if you just look at the associations, again, when we evaluate something, we have to look at its associations and see, again, the planets and the nature of the planets that it's associating with, and the functional status of those planets as well. What functional status means based on their rulerships, what they rule. Again, this is why rulerships is the most important key once you start actually reading a specific chart, not the natural quality of the planet, the rulerships. So let's look and see what is influencing the sun, okay? Let's come to his rulership later, but first just let's look at its associations. Okay, it's joined Mercury, which is the 9th and the 12th house ruler. It's joined Mars, which is the 2nd and the 7th house ruler, which is also called a Marika. It's joined Venus, which is the 1st and the 8th house ruler. So right away we see the sun first and is joined the 8th and the 12th house ruler. It's also joined a natural malefic, Mars. Again, it's a powerful Mars. It's powerful, just like the sun is powerful, but that's a separate consideration. The dignity is just, it's the force through which it comes through. Of course, you want to subscribe, but even if you are subscribed, you want to click this little bell that says get notified about every new video. You want to click that, and then you will be notified, and it has the little ringer on after you do that. So make sure to do that. Okay? A powerful, natural, and functional malefic, which is what the sun is, can be very difficult and damaging, as we see with Hitler. So again, but it's joined a natural malefic Mars, and you take that into consideration first. You consider the yoga second, okay? So Mars is first a natural malefic, okay? Join the sun. And by the way, I went over the Venus Dasha quickly, but this is also why he didn't become really famous or anything in the Venus Dasha. First of all, he started it when he was like 19. Or I'm sorry, he ended it by the time he was 19. So this Mars-Venus forms a Raja Yoga, but there's other things like Venus is retrograde and Mars is a natural malefic, like I just said. So I kind of glossed over it when I discussed Venus, but here it becomes very important because I'm, more deeply analyzing the Sun Dasha. So first, it's joined the natural malefic, which means it's going to be intense. This is what happens, regardless of whether, well, I'll come back to that. So the other things we have to look at, it's aspected by Jupiter. It's like, well, again, aspected by Jupiter. Sounds good. So the sun is exalted. It's with Mars in its own sign. It's aspected by Jupiter. Why was it so difficult? Again, obviously we have to realize it was difficult. We have the history. So we got to find out why, right? Some of my students, they start trying to make a case for why it's wrong. But it can't be like that. It's exalted. It's with Mars. It's aspected by Jupiter. It was good. Wait, we already know it wasn't good. So let's see why. So again, Jupiter, it's like, but it's Jupiter. Jupiter's good. If you don't consider the functional nature of the planet, it's good. But Jupiter is the 3rd and the 6th house ruler for Libra. It is maybe the most difficult planet for Libra. It rules 2 cruel houses, and the other cruel house ruler is the Sun, because the Sun rules the 11th house, which is a cruel planet. In fact, the most cruel. Now, this goes back to very important rules in Brihat Parashara Horasastra, which describes the nature of the planets as house rulers. So, again, this is for my advanced students, so I'll just explain it that way. But in Brihat Parashara Horasastra, there are 4 categories of houses. Again, this is extremely important, and there's a way to categorize the dominant bhavas that the planets rule. It's a very powerful chapter. In fact, my book on the Ascendant is really breaking down that chapter because it's so important. It gives you the means to calculate the Raja Yogas, the nature of the planets as house rulers, and the houses themselves, and how to characterize and categorize them correctly. So we see these cruel houses. There are positive houses, the trines, 1, 5, and 9, and the cruel or the Trishidaya houses, 3, 6, and 11. The rulers of 3, 6, and 11 are the most malefic. They're actually the malefic houses. Even the Dushtanas, even the 12th and the 8th house aren't negative. They just take things away, but taking things away isn't negative. The things that are negative or that are cruel are the rulers of 3, 6, and 11. And we can see with Hitler very clearly, Jupiter rules the 3rd and the 6th, and it's aspecting the Sun, the 11th house ruler. So the first thing to understand really about the Sun, I kind of worked it in reverse because I wanted to show you the things influencing the Sun, but the first thing to understand is he went from Venus Dasha, Venus, which is about Dharma and purpose because it's the 1st house ruler, and it was ruling this Raja Yoga up here, and it was ruling this Moon Jupiter, Ketu, which again, because it was ruling these things in the 3rd house, it gave him a sense of creativity and excitement. Plus, he was a child. It didn't destroy and consume things, right? Even though, for example, the only one that's really cruel here is Jupiter. The only thing that's getting ruled that's cruel by Venus Dasha, because Venus is, it's ruling this 3rd and 6th house ruler. But in this sense, it's also ruling the Moon, which is a gentle planet, and it's also forming those powerful yogas, which gave him a lot of interest and a lot of enthusiasm about them when he was younger. But then the Sun comes, it's a huge transition from Venus to the Sun. From this planet of Dharma, plus, again, the first quality of the planet is its nature. Venus is a gentle planet. The Sun is intense. It takes 6 years to burn up everything. That's the Sun Dasha. Many times, and it can burn things up and create something amazing in its wake. But it can burn something up, and in doing so, just torch the whole landscape. That's what happened with Hitler. Who he was when he started his Venus Dasha, which is someone who wanted to be an artist and he was designing furniture and stuff. When the Sun Dasha started, all of that was just consumed because the Sun is a functional malefic, because it rules the 11th house. It's a natural malefic because the Sun is cruel. Those two things in general. And in the same chapter, Parashara says that the Sun is the most cruel. I think he said it's the most cruel, or certainly that it's very cruel. It's joined a natural malefic Mars. It's joined the 8th Lord Venus, the 12th Lord Mercury. It's getting an aspect from the 3rd and 6th Lord. Very difficult. And the way you can see the exaltation, And the way you should look at dignity from now to the end of time is not necessarily that it's good. It does not bring good stuff. It brings a power and an intensity. It's awake. It gives its full effects, which is basically what Parashara says. Gives its full effects. Doesn't say good effects. One might assume that, but it gives its full effects. Many times, exalted malefics give their full malefic quality. But again, in so doing, it also brings intelligence. It brings awareness because its dignity is awake. It's Jagrat. It's awake. So this came to wake him up and consume and burn everything around him. That's basically what the sun did. And you can see it because it's not ruling anything that's giving. It's just taking. Especially when you look at all the house rulerships and the natural qualities and the functional qualities of the planets. So those Dharma planets for Libra are Mercury, Venus, and Saturn. So let's look at what happened when he went into Moon Dasha. Now let's look a little different. So Sun Dasha, he's homeless, mother dies, art school reject, just getting by until Moon Dasha, 1913. Finds himself, literally, he finds himself in the war. He was a decorated soldier. He loved the war. He was like a messenger. Not, he wasn't, distinguished, he wasn't general or anything. He was just a guy. And he rose through the ranks because he was very enthusiastic. And then after the war, he ascends to fame as a speaker and a leader after the 24 points speech that he gave in Moon Mercury Dasha. So why is the moon so much better? Again, when you look on the surface, it's like the sun was exalted and it's with Mars, and it's with Mercury, and it should be great. And the moon, well, it's over there in the third house, it's with Ketu, third house. Go back to the rulerships. Remember, sun didn't rule anything. Venus ruled all these planets. Venus ruled a lot. Sun rules nothing. So you have to look at everything that influences the sun. What does the moon rule? Any planets in the moon signs? Oh, boom, Saturn. Is Saturn important for Libra? Well, it's the Yoga Karaka planet. Raja Yoga Karaka. The moon rules it. Again, why did he get this power of the Yoga Karaka? Oh, I forgot to mention the other thing with the sun. It's aspected by Saturn. I forgot. The sun is also aspected by Saturn. Every malefic influence is on the sun. Okay? This is an aspect to Saturn. Or I'm sorry, this is an aspect from Saturn to the moon, right? I almost forgot that. So, in the Moon Dasha, it rules the Raja Yoga in the 10th house of Saturn, the Yoga Karaka. And it's a Raja Yoga because it's the 5th lord in the 10th. The moon rules it. You say, well, why didn't it? This is why it didn't happen in Saturn Dasha. It happened in Moon Dasha because the moon rules Saturn. Rulerships are everything. And look at the nature of the moon. Of course, first of all, the nature of the moon is to connect you to people. Again, you want to understand the karmas of the sun came and he was like, who am I? Who am I really? This is the first thing, is we get the feeling of the planet in its natural state. And it's an exalted sun. Inside, he's like, I'm a leader. I'm a great dictator. I have all this power. Again, because the sun has joined all these planets. But at the time, he didn't have all of that. So what the sun did was just torch everything and say, and make, mainly have him go, I don't know who I am. I'm trying to find my power. Especially with all these malefic influences, he couldn't really put anything together in sun. So the sun is the pressure of your individuality on a spiritual level. The Lagna Lord is the individuality on an embodied level. And again, the transition from Venus to the sun for him was also a change from that to who he is as a person in the world, which is Venus because it's his ruling planet, to who he is like on a soul level. And all that malefic influence on his soul, he's got a malefic soul. You can also see that, right? And he got the karmas of that. Because he didn't have any power, it just kind of took away everything. But again, the nature of the moon is then to connect us again. This is how the dashas work. Sun takes away, moon connects us again. So he felt very connected. And again, he felt connected. So even in the war, he's like, oh, I'm around all my comrades. I feel connected because he's in the moon. Not only does he feel connected, but the moon rules his Raja Yoga planet. So he literally was connected, and he was connected to something very deep and authentic in himself, which was to be of service, to be of, to do what needs to get done. It brought about it was a very humbling time for the most part as well. He was just a regular infantry soldier, so to speak, and then he ascended through the ranks. But then again, Moon Mercury is when he really found himself and gained fame after his 24-point speech. So again, what does Mercury rule? So it was Moon Mercury. Mercury is, again, the first thing people do is they go, oh, it's in this sign, it's in this house. Notice I didn't even do that. Even with the moon, I barely even said the moon was in the 3rd house. You could talk about that, but it's mainly what does the moon rule? It rules the 10th house and rules the sun and rules Saturn. I have to tell my students this after years. I'll talk to them and they'll be like, oh, Mercury, oh, it's in the 7th house, it's with exalted sun. That's 2nd or 3rd of importance. What does Mercury rule? Okay? Because again, he's in Moon Mercury. Well, Mercury rules the 9th house and it rules Rahu in the 9th. This is why he was such a passionate orator with the ability to confuse with language and to advance propaganda. Mercury also rules Saturn because it's in Aslesha Nakshatra. Now again, here is another very powerful principle. When you see both rulers of a planet run, then it gets activated even more and with more strength. So Saturn is not only in Cancer, it's in Aslesha. So the two rulers of Saturn, based on Rashi and Nakshatra, are both active here. This is why Moon Mercury was so powerful for him in finding himself. Again, first of all, Mercury does rule Rahu in the 9th. 9th house, a great leader, a great inspiration through language, Gemini, in a Rahu way, to conflate, to distort propaganda. One of the reasons he became Hitler, this was Hitler before he was Hitler. This is when he was finding himself. You see these latent tendencies, the ability to lead the masses, to be a dictator, to use words and language to manipulate or to move or to inspire, but also to wield power and to be in control. You see in Moon Mercury, it really comes about. He saw his influence and his power. He really stepped into it because both rulers of Saturn are running, the moon and Mercury, because Saturn is in Cancer, ruled by the moon, and Aslesha, ruled by Mercury. This is why Moon Mercury was so powerful, for him literally finding himself. And then the next dashas is pretty easy to see. After Moon, he went into Mars dasha. Well, it's easy to see why Mars was powerful. Now we're getting Mars as the ruler of all of these Raja Yogas in Aries. Again, Mars is ruling the sun. The sun isn't ruling Mars. Again, so he doesn't get the power of the sun in the sun dasha because the sun is not ruling it. Mars rules the sun. The sun rules the 11th house, which is willful and stressful for Libra, and it's overtaken by all this malefic energy. When you look at it, you have to count these things systematically. So this is why the sun torched everything as he was trying to find himself, and then the moon built it back up again. Again, we can also go look at the moon and see that it's also forming what's called Gajakeshwara Yoga in the moon dasha. All these things are important. They do influence. But the first things that show the karmas are what the planets rule. And then you bring in the dignities and whatnot to see how that thing is going to come out and whatnot. So I decided to make this and share it with the public because I was going to share it just with my students because there was a conversation about this, but I thought everyone might benefit from seeing this case study on what makes karmas ripen.